Hello friends, welcome to Dr. Ossai Physiology Academy, Dopa for short. This is the place where we make the learning of physiology easy, exciting, and effective. Thank you for joining me. So today we're going to be starting a brand new topic, GIT Physiology. What do we mean by GIT? This is gastrointestinal tract. Okay, so that's GIT, gastrointestinal tract, or otherwise known as the digestive tract. Okay, so a major thing that every human does is to eat. Without food, there will be no life. Why? Because you are what you eat. Your body, this structure you see like this, you grew from small, a baby, very small to this size because you are constantly fed with resources, nutrients that added to your cells. Your cells grew, multiplied, added nutrients, and they kept growing. So food is very, very important. So very important also about this GIT is that it has a connection with the external environment. You know, when you eat, it goes from the external environment to your mouth and down into your body, and it enters into the internal environment. So it's one very important function of the organism that without it, you will die. Though you will not die immediately, but if you don't eat for several days, maybe 40 days like Jesus in the Bible, you may find out that before you even get to the 40th day, you are dead. And before you die, you first of all be like skeleton. A pack of skeleton with skin, because your body will lose everything trying to stay alive all those days, to be using all your fat and everything. Okay, so very important. So what we will be learning in GIT physiology is how this food that you take like this, raw material, take beans, rice, stew, egusi soup, and all of that, how it is transformed into nutrients that enter into the bloodstream. You cannot take beans and put it inside your bloodstream like that. It has to go through a process of transformation. So that's what we'll be doing. Okay? So now, look at the digestive system. First of all, we want to be talking about the different parts, because the digestive system, it's a tract, it's a long tube that measures 20 feet or 9 meters. Okay? This is the length of the digestive, from the mouth down to the anus. When you get to the intestines, they are folded. It's very long. Remember those days in dissection, in anatomy, when we dissect the cadaver, we drew out the intestine very long from one end of the room to the other. Okay, so it's very long. So to give you perspective, 20 feet, a normal average tall man, it's about 6 feet tall. I'm about 6 feet and 2 inches. So you add, when a 6 feet person is lying down, add 2 more people. That will give you then a little more, 2 additional feet will give you the length. So you can see how long when you stretch it out. You see the journey that food has to go through. So when you are defecating, it's not the food you just ate a few hours ago. The food you are eating probably the day before or even 2 days before, depending on the speed at which it moves. Moves slowly till it gets to the anus. So we're going to be learning all that. All right. So we say it's a tract. So we're going to be looking at the different components and compartments of this tract. Okay. So first of all, you have the mouth. the first cavity. That's where it starts from. Okay? So after the mouth, you have the esophagus. And after the esophagus, you have the part that is distended. It stores food. A lot of people call it the stomach. They refer to the abdomen and the stomach, because the stomach is the widest, dilated, expanded part, okay? So esophagus links to the stomach. And the stomach now leads to the small intestine. Small intestine. And from the small intestine, you enter the large intestine. So the large intestine, we usually call it colon, okay? So which is further divided into ascending colon, transverse colon, and then descending colon. Okay? Then from the colon, you now have the rectum, which leads to the anus, where excreta, feces comes out from. Right? So you see the journey. Now, how come we divided all these things? What is the dividing line? All these things we call parts. They are components, or you call them compartments. Every compartment, there is something that is separating them. Okay? They are called sphincters or valves. Okay? So compartments, the different compartments, they are separated by sphincters. So what do the sphincters do? Sphincters, logically, you have, let's say this is a tract, and you have a sphincter here, making it 3 compartments. So the sphincter, they control the movement, okay? They help to control the movement from one compartment to the other, okay? So between the esophagus and this, you have what is known as the upper esophageal sphincter. Okay? That's between the mouth and the esophagus. Then between the esophagus and the stomach, you have what we call the lower esophageal sphincter. All right? Then the stomach and the small intestine, you have what is known as the pyloric sphincter, between this and this. Pyloric sphincter. Okay? So what about the small and large intestine? There's something separating them. It's known as the ileocecal valve. This time, we don't call it sphincter, but it's the same function. Okay? We have the ileocecal valve. Okay? Why? Because the last part of the small intestine is called the ileum. So this small intestine has 3 parts. Okay? Let's mention them. You have the duodenum, which is the first part. You have the jejunum, second part, and the last part is the ileum. So it's that ileum that is connected to the cecum, which is the beginning, called cecum. The British will put A here and say cecum, okay? With the beginning of the large intestine, the colon. Okay, that's why it's called ileocecal valve. So these valves, as they separate them into compartments, then this large intestine just continues as rectum and then anus. Right? So that is the tract, the gastrointestinal tract, because it's called gastro because the stomach, another name for it is gastrum. So the adjective is known as gastric, gastro, all right? Intestinal. So those are the two very prominent parts, the stomach and the intestines. A lot of work happens there. So now, an overview of the function. Then before we'll now go into the structure, how the structure enables the function. So let's look at how the general overview of the function of the digestive tract. What happens is that when food enters the mouth, of course, you chew voluntarily. A lot of time you chew, and you say, okay, I've chewed enough. You now swallow. And after you swallow, you don't do any other work. The gastrointestinal tract does the remaining. The food from your esophagus moves along 20 feet. So one of the major functions of this tract is that it moves food. So movement, the major prominent functions of this tract. Okay, we'll talk about this later. This is showing us the structure of the tract. All right, so movement. Now, another thing, as it's moving the food, especially when it's getting to the stomach, intestines, that food starts getting transformed. One of the basic things is that when you take the food that you take, there are complex substances, complex chemical substances. They are molecules, macromolecules. They cannot be transported into the bloodstream in that state. So they need to be broken down from complex to simple molecules. It's those simple molecules that can easily cross the different cell membranes and enter into the bloodstream. So what breaks the food substances down? It's a chemical process, and it is done by enzymes. So as if that food is moving, enzymes are secreted into the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract. A lot of enzymes with water and so many things. So a major function also is secretion. Okay? Then number 3, those enzymes now start acting on the food to break them down into those things. That process is called digestion. Then when it's now fully broken down into the simplest form of nutrient, then it can easily cross and transported from the lumen into the bloodstream. That process of transport of food into the bloodstream is called absorption. Number 4, absorption. Okay, so you see the 4 basic cardinal functions of this digestive system. It moves food, it secretes enzymes to digest the food, and then it transports it into the blood. The process known as absorption. So what happens? This movement, what brings about it? What affects and implements this basic function? Of course, you know, it's muscles. Muscles, they help in movement. But this muscle is smooth muscle. You are not in control of it. So they are smooth muscles. that carry out this function. Then secretion. There are glands. Okay? There are glands and some other organs. We'll talk about them briefly. Then the digestion. It's these enzymes that are secreted from these glands. They help with the digestion. Okay? So then the absorption. We'll talk about the transport processes and mechanisms that are involved. Okay? So know this. So these other glands that secrete, there are some organs. They are not really parts of this gastrointestinal tract, okay? But they come from outside and secrete substances into the gas. They are called accessory organs of the digestive, of the gastrointestinal tract. Okay? Why these ones here, mouth, esophagus, you can add, even before the mouth, you can add your tongue and your teeth. Okay? They are organs. Yeah, those ones are primary organs of the gastrointestinal tract. These accessory organs, what are they? You have, for example, salivary glands. Okay. You have the pancreas. You have the liver. You also have gallbladder. Okay. All these things, when we talk about secretion, we'll talk about them in details. So just know these are the 4 cardinal points. So this is how we follow. This is the pattern we follow when discussing it. We usually call this movement motility. So GIT physiology, we are going to be divided into GIT motility, GIT secretion, then digestion and absorption. Then we are going to talk about how they are regulated by hormones. There are GIT hormones that help to regulate the whole process of movement, digestion, and even feeding in itself. All right? So now we are going to be talking about the basic structure. You know, every time you talk about how things function, you must talk about how it is structured to function, because structure determines function. So we are going to do that after this break. Right? Welcome back. So now we want to focus on the basic structure of the gastrointestinal tract, and that's represented in this diagram. Now, that intestine, the stomach, all that you see, especially the intestines, they are divided into different layers that help in the different functions. We're going to mention them, all these functions. They help. You can relate it to these layers. All right? So first of all, the outermost, sometimes you can go from inside out, outside in. I like to go from outside in. So the outermost layer of this gastrointestinal tract is this one here. If you see it, I will divide it into layers. This one is called serosa. All right, let's write it here. Serosa. Okay. Then, after the serosa, you now have another layer. It's called longitudinal muscle layer. It's made up of the longitudinal muscle. It's a smooth muscle, okay? So 2, longitudinal. longitudinal, smooth muscle. All right? Then after the longitudinal muscle, the next layer, this one here, is circular muscle. Okay, so let's write it down here. Circular smooth muscle. And after that, the next layer, which is represented by this one here, is called submucosa. Here, submucosa. And the final layer, which is this last elongated part, this whole layer from here, is the mucosa. Okay? So the fifth layer is the mucosa. So now we are going to break them down even further. This mucosa is broken down into 3 other parts. Now, when you look at this mucosa, look at it very well. You see that there's this outer ring here. It's made up of some muscles. Okay? We call it muscularis mucosa. So this is divided into muscularis mucosa. Okay? And after that, this white place here, inside here, is called the lamina propria. Lamina propria. Just has loose connective tissues. Then this innermost place, by this black line here, that is where the food touches. The outermost part is called the epithelium. Okay? Call it the intestinal epithelium. Right? So we have the epithelium. So this mucosa, the innermost part, the epithelium, is the one that touches the food. These ones don't touch the food. Okay? So we'll come back to this. Let's start from the serosa. What does the serosa do? The serosa is the outermost part. So that's where the intestine, points of attachment. That's what the serosa does. It's a point of attachment of the intestine to the body wall. Okay, you see this thing here, it's like a sheet. It's called mesentery. Mesentery. Okay, it's attached to the outermost wall, the serosa. So when blood vessels come, they enter through this mesentery and enter and pierce from the serosa down inside. Okay, so you now have the next layer called the longitudinal muscle, in the sense that it's based on how they are arranged. They are arranged longitudinally. The circular ones are arranged in circles. They have 2 different functions, as we'll mention very soon. Okay, so this longitudinal muscle, they are arranged along like this. When they contract, they shorten the intestine, the gastrointestinal tract, and by so doing, they help to propel. So this one helps to propel, mainly to propel food. Okay? Propel the intestinal content. Let's call it food. Okay? Then the circular muscle is shaped round. Just imagine it when it contracts. What do you think it will do? It will constrict the intestine. The intestinal lumen will become smaller. So when it does that at different points, it helps to mix the food. So that mixing process it helps it to mix it with enzymes. Where those secretions come in and it helps to mix it very well so that digestion will be more effective. So this one does a lot of mixing. Mix food with enzymes. Okay? So that's what that one does. Then this submucosa, this layer here, that's where a lot of these vessels are contained. The blood vessels, the arteries and the veins, okay? Then it also has glands. If you look at it, you see some glands here, okay? These are submucosal glands. They secrete substances, all right? Then the next one, the mucosa, which is the innermost part. So this mucosa has this epithelium, which is the innermost part in contact with the food. What does it do? It has folds. This epithelium has a lot of folds. We call them intestinal villus. Okay? It has folds. They're folded. That folding helps to increase the surface area for digestion and absorption, especially for absorption. Okay? Folds. Intestinal villi. Okay? You know, the intestines, the typical parts that we're concerned with. Okay? So, other parts of the GIT, they don't have villi. Okay? So, we are focusing on the intestine. You know, we call it gastrointestinal. The stomach and the intestine are the two major parts that we really focus on. Okay, so don't be confused. So intestinal villi, talking about especially the small intestine. You have a lot of folds from this epithelium. Then the folds themselves, they also have another set of finger-like projections. So these intestinal villi, okay, that come out from the folds, they have another finger-like projection called microvilli. Okay? Singular is villus. Right? Singular villus. So the intestinal villi are finger-like projections from the folds. Then the microvilli are further finger-like projections from the intestinal villi. So these ones are very many. Those microvilli are also known as what? Brush border. So this one is also known as brush border. Okay? So their function is just to increase the surface area for absorption. Right? As this mucosa. So this muscularis, they contract a little to aid. It aids the absorptive process. All right, this one is just loose connective tissue. Okay, so we've talked about these functions. Now, in between these longitudinal and circular muscular layers, in between it, let's use this. Okay, there's a network of nerves. It's called myenteric plexus. Myenteric plexus. Okay? Another name, they have two names. Don't ever get confused. This one has another name known as Auerbach's plexus. Auerbach's plexus. So when you say myenteric plexus, Auerbach's plexus, they mean the same thing. Okay? It lies in between this and this. Then in between circular and submucosa, you have another network of nerves, which are even more than this one. Okay? That one is known as submucosal plexus. Submucosal plexus. Okay? So the submucosal plexus, just like its counterpart, mesenteric, it has another name. That other name is called Mersnas. Mersnas plexus. Okay? We are a network of nerves. Because before a muscle contracts, it needs to be stimulated by nerves. So this mesenteric plexus, it helps to stimulate these muscles so that they contract. This longitudinal muscle, have you seen an earthworm, how it moves? The way it moves, that's how this longitudinal muscle, once they contract, they help to propel the food forward. And the circular one helps in mixing, okay? Mesenteric plexus. Then this submucosal plexus, they help to stimulate the glands to secrete all those water electrolytes and enzymes. Remember, in general physiology, when we learned, if you don't know about general physiology, I'm sure you look for the video and watch it. We talked about the fact that control systems, they have 5 components. And the last component there is called effector. Okay? And we said that effectors are usually what? Muscles and glands. Especially smooth muscles, because they are more abundant everywhere. So these smooth muscles, they are effectors. And glands, they are also effectors. That's why they are supplied by nerves. The nerves help to stimulate them so that they can implement a particular change and function. Okay? So the muscles, they implement the function of propulsion and mixing. Then the glands, they affect the function of secretion of enzymes to digest the food. Okay? So this submucosal or Mersnas plexus help to stimulate the effectors, the glands, while the mesenteric plexus, also known as Urbach's plexus, help to stimulate these effectors, the smooth muscles. So I think that is what you need to know about the structure of the gastrointestinal tract. All right? So the next thing we're going to be dealing with, we're going to now focus more on this nervous supply to the gastrointestinal. There's something special about it. Because the gastrointestinal tract, it has 2 different nervous supplies. We're going to deal with that more in the part 2 of this lecture, right? So I've written a book on GIT Physiology, so check the description, but you see a link there to download a soft copy of the book just for a token, okay, for further reading. I also wrote other books on other areas of physiology. Also check the link there. We have a website and soon which will tell you about so many other things we are doing to make the learning of physiology easy, exciting, and effective. All right? So see you in the part 2.